Welcome today to the Adelaide Biomed City Minireviews webinar series. Today we will have Joe present about the Adelaide Intermediary program. My name is Yvette van Eenennaam. I'm the CEO of Adelaide Biomed City, the health and medical district here in Adelaide. And I'm most pleased to be your chair of today. Before I will introduce the topic and the presenter further, I would like to acknowledge the Kaurna people, the original custodians of the land we meet on today. And I'd like to pay my respect to the elders, both past, present and future. I also like to welcome our South Australian national and international attendees today. These weekly short webinar series we organize for our researchers, clinicians, students, entrepreneurs and industry here in South Australia and across the globe, all to get a deeper insight in what's happening here in South Australia and our key capabilities. We record all the webinars, so you can find them back on our website. So if you want to find relevant recordings for you, just have a search on the website. There are a range of areas that we cover, from research areas to industry companies to capabilities. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask them. Use the Q&A at the bottom of your page. I will read them and I will make sure I give them back to Joe to answer at the end of her presentation. So this week is about the Adelaide Intermediary program. Welcome, Joe. It's part of the strategic agenda of Adelaide Biomed City. And it's designed to help experts in driving the health and medical innovation projects and really strategically build up capacity, connections, and opportunities. So earlier this year, MTPConnect came out as the winner of the tender process and have been appointed to deliver on this program. It's all funded by the South Australian government through the EXCITE strategy, which is the state's research and innovation strategy. And Joe Close is the director employed by MTPConnect of the Adelaide Intermediary program and leads a team of 4 FTE. She has a real deep experience in health, also medical technology, pharmaceutical sectors. I believe over more than 20 years of working experience across university, research organizations, investors, also startup and community organizations, in a range of leading roles, all to drive new innovations. So Joe also co-founded the medical device partnering programs at Flinders University, together with Professor Karen Reynolds. Many of you here in South Australia will be very familiar with the program. And she's currently a non-executive director of Cure for Cystic Fibrosis. So I'm very pleased to introduce Joe, and we're very fortunate to have her here run the Adelaide Innovation Program. I hand over to you now, Joe.
Thanks, and thanks for having me on. It's a great opportunity to share what we're doing in the Adelaide Intermediary Program with many. I see some familiar faces online. Let me just make sure that I can share my screen with you all. So like Yvette said, I'm the director of the Adelaide Intermediary Program, and we've now been running for just a few months. It was announced back in February, so we're now 4 months in. The Intermediary Program is really, like Yvette said, to drive innovation and translation, particularly for Adelaide Biomed City and across South Australia in health innovation endeavours. I'm just going to give you a broad background about where we've come from, what we're doing and how you can get access to some of the services that we offer right across the state. Yvette's already touched on this, but the EXCITE strategy really sets the guiding light for what intermediaries could do in the state. So we've seen a lot of investment in capital projects, in buildings right across South Australia. And what the chief scientists recognised was that in order to really get the best value out of those investments, we needed to mobilise people, and that was through an intermediary function. So the first intermediary that was announced was for Adelaide Biomed City. And as Yvette mentioned, a tender went out for an external innovation and translation intermediary. At a really high level, there were 4 key objectives that this aimed to achieve, and that is to enhance industry research collaboration, increase knowledge transfer, expand technology capability so that we can do more, and ultimately grow revenue and exports here in South Australia. So I think everyone has kind of a different idea of what intermediaries may or may not do. And there are a whole range of intermediaries globally. that can be used as models for what we're doing here in South Australia. There was a lot of work done by Yvette and the chief scientist in designing what this intermediary function would be and how it could benefit the South Australian community. But you can think about us as mediators. So one of the key roles that we play is introducing people, engaging the various stakeholders that exist in our sector, and also broadly representing what we're here doing in South Australia. And when I talk about the sector, MTPConnect really works across the medtech, pharma, biotech and digital sector. And in South Australia, that broadly covers health innovation. And we work through research, innovation and translation. So working right at the start of that innovation cycle, where it happens inside universities and research organisations, right through to working with companies and helping them grow in the industry. So we are that go-between. We absolutely link parties, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what that looks like. A key role of ours is to form collaborations between parties, and that's not just locally, but it's also nationally and globally. That's very much on our agenda. We're also facilitators of the knowledge network, so we're really keen in building the capacity in South Australia and sharing knowledge so that we can do more. You can think of us as addressing gaps, and that's something that you'll commonly hear me talk about, because we don't want to do things that are already happening here in the state. We absolutely want to address gaps that may exist. And they may be gaps in information, they may be gaps in access, often transfer or translation gaps. And one of the key things that MTPConnect is particularly known for is addressing skills gaps. So you might be interested to know what the outcomes are expected of us. We do report into the Department of Innovation and Skills, working closely with Adelaide Biomed City. And so at a really broad level, we are trying to see businesses spend more on health and medical innovation here in South Australia. We want to increase collaboration and knowledge transfer, and we want to do that between research and industry. It's really important for us. We want to increase the collaboration that exists between all of the partners that are part of Adelaide Biomed City. And we want to increase the performance that we have in South Australia across that value chain. And so that very much relates to increasing more innovation that's occurring inside university and making sure that that innovation makes it out into industry through translation. We want to see more innovation active firms in South Australia. And we also want to increase the global significance of the Adelaide Biomed City precinct. And that's really about becoming a magnet. So why was MTPConnect awarded this particular intermediary role? For those of you who don't know about MTPConnect, we're the industry growth centre for medtech, pharma, biotech and digital health, as I mentioned before. We've been around now for about 7 years, and we started out as an industry growth organisation when the Department of Innovation, Science, Energy and Resources established these growth centres. So we work with all the stakeholders that you can see on the left-hand side of this slide: researchers, companies, government, universities, investors, and many more. And we have 4 key objectives, and that is to increase collaboration and commercialisation, to improve management and workforce skills, like I mentioned before. We also have a role in optimising the regulatory environment and also improving access to global supply chains and international markets. So we do that at a national level. And you can see the alignment that that has with the objectives of the intermediary function here in South Australia. So what's really great about MTPConnect playing this intermediary role is that we already work from a basis of having done this in multiple states across Australia and having access to the broader resources of MTPConnect. When I talk about the broader resources of MTPConnect, some of you may be more familiar with MTPConnect as a grant funder. And that's because in recent years, we have administered more than $180 million worth of funds through the Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources, but more recently through the Medical Research Future Fund. On the right-hand side of this screen, you can see 5 particular programs that we administer. A couple of those are offline and some of those are still available. And so I will tell you about those in case you're interested in funding opportunities. One of the first programs we administered for Biomed, for the Medical Research Future Fund was the Biomed Tech Horizons grant. And so Biomed Tech Horizons ultimately awarded $45 million, and those grants are now coming to a close. That covered medtech, biotech, right across the spectrum, and it was a very translationally focused activity. We then moved on to do Biomedical Translation Bridge. Similar kind of scheme. We have a couple of those that are still finishing up, but it has been totally awarded. You can see there, in total, we did 21 projects. Over $20 million of funds went out to the sector. Biomed Translation Bridge was the first where we actually partnered with other organisations across Australia to deliver that program. So what we realised was it wasn't good enough to just give funds out, that actually we needed to support the grant recipients and provide mentorship and connect them to a range of support mechanisms like other service providers or other organisations that can ensure the success of these projects. We realised that when we're working in this translational space, that it takes many around the table to actually see these innovations really result in ultimate success. And so that was the first with Biomedical Translation Bridge. We also administer the READY scheme. READY is the Researcher Exchange and Development with Industry. Essentially, you can think of it as a workforce and skills program. One of the activities in the READY scheme that you may have seen recently is the READY Fellowship Scheme. That is currently we're seeking applications for our final READY Fellowships, which provides an opportunity for researchers to work in industry for up to 12 months. It's up to $250,000 that is provided. And the intention is for those researchers to gain valuable skills that they bring back to the institutions. Our Targeted Translation Research Accelerator focuses on cardiovascular disease and diabetes. We established 2 national centres in this space, and we also award project funds in this area. There will be another round opening likely in about January next year. And finally, our clinical translation and commercialisation of medtech, that commenced this year. We're currently reviewing our first round as part of that scheme. Obviously, it's focused on medtech, and there had to be an element of clinical validation in those projects that were put forward. So what you can see is we are very much working in the translational space, providing funding to projects right across Australia. And those projects, like I said, also have some support built into the way that they're assessed and the ongoing delivery of the programs. So what are we doing here in South Australia? This is a really busy slide, but I'll talk you through the 5 key elements or services that we're delivering here in the state. And the first one is one that we've been delivering right across Australia, but now we have a significant advantage in South Australia to have extra resources to do expert advice and mentoring. We are more than happy for you to reach out to us at any time to have a conversation. Every day of the week, me and my team are having conversations with researchers, with companies, with people looking to relocate to South Australia. All of those conversations are quite different. And our job is to help navigate. My apologies, but I am just being put in the dark. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to turn the light on so that you can see me.
And Joe,
clearly not moving enough in this space.
Joe, may I ask? Some of us have difficulty understanding you. I don't know if it's the location you're at, but if there's any opportunity, the sound can be improved. Please do.
Okay.
We do hear you.
I'll bring my computer closer to me to see if that makes any difference. But unfortunately, I can't change the sound. Okay. So I was just telling you about those one-on-one consultations. The other thing that often leads to is us undertaking reviews of proposals. So they might be proposals for some of the grant programs that we administer, or it may be other programs like the Cooperative Research Centre projects, which we recently provided advice on. As part of the activities that MTPConnect does frequently, you can see those in the darker green. We also often do briefings. One of the key outcomes that we try to achieve is local and global connection. So for many of those consultations, we will provide strategic introductions that might happen at the local level. Like I said, it might happen nationally, or it may happen internationally. We also facilitate connection through networking events. And so hopefully you've seen some of the events that we've been promoting here in Adelaide Biomed City, where we are shining a spotlight on some of the success stories and inviting people to come along and network amongst one another. We also hold industry roundtables and expert panels. We will be coordinating innovation summits, and MTPConnect as a national entity also does trade delegations. And you may have seen that there was a significant delegation to bio at the national level just recently. A key role that we play is in capacity building, and that is about hosting targeted seminars and programs. It's also about leveraging the existing schemes of MTPConnect in training and development through that READY program. We also have a number of webinars that we undertake, and they're available on the MTPConnect website. We're also focused on facilitating access to infrastructure and expertise, and we have our eyes particularly on the NCRIS scheme, making sure that people are aware of what facilities in South Australia they can access and how we can get more of those facilities here so that we can do really good research activity. I mentioned talent interaction. We've got our eyes on the Global Talent Visa program and trying to find those individuals that are looking to relocate to Adelaide. They come to us through a range of mechanisms. Sometimes that occurs through our partners at Austrade, sometimes through MTPConnect National. But we do have a few people that are looking to relocate to Adelaide, and our job is to nominate them and to find them a home so that their skills can be valued in the sector. We work on strategic projects, and so we will provide support for major projects, such as we've got our eyes currently on the Medical Research Future Fund National Critical Research Infrastructure Scheme. So we're trying to coordinate activity in that space. Sometimes we take part in committees. We will provide letters of support where they align with the sector competitiveness plan. And of course, we have that strategic funding that we administer. Something that you may not be aware of is that MTPConnect has an extensive knowledge base. Here in South Australia, we're trying to understand the capabilities of the sector within the state, but we also have access to industry reports such as the sector competitiveness plan that I mentioned before. MTPConnect has more than 130 podcasts. We have case studies, we often put out news, and we do industry consultations. So who is the team in South Australia? So we have a dedicated team of 4, as Yvette mentioned. I come from a background of having worked in all 3 universities in the state. I've tried them all out in different roles. I've done research management, I've worked in angel investment, I've worked in philanthropy, I've done some consulting, worked in startups, I've worked in the drug discovery space. So I have broadly tried out different places within the sector. Stephanie Morris is our Innovation and Translation Director, and Stephanie equally has a whole range of experiences that she brings to the table. The most recent that she has been in Imperial College London, where she was the Director of Partnerships and Commercialisations for their Department of Medicine. But Stephanie also has experience in the startup space and in multinational companies. Dana Bell is our Innovation and Translation Intermediary. Dana joined us from Novartis, where she's had a long history of more than 20 years across Big Pharma, in fact. She's been in sales, in business development, in strategic projects, as well as in market entry strategy. So she really offers that Big Pharma perspective to the work that we do. And last but not least, Peter Vogren joined us as Engagement and Communications Manager and has extensive experience having worked in local council in engagement and comms. But as you can see from this picture, we're connected to a bigger team across Australia. We're just about to recruit a Senior Director of Stakeholder Engagement, but we're connected to a communications platform right across Australia. You can also see that on the right-hand side of this, there are multiple program directors in MTPConnect that administer those funding programs. And because of the partnerships that those programs have, there are some extra people on the ground in Australia, in South Australia, through the Medical Device Partnering Program. You may be familiar with Andrew Milligan. He has been running the Biomedical Translation Bridge and the Clinical Trials and Commercialisation of MedTech scheme here in South Australia as part of the broader program activities. Olivia White is a MedTech venture partner for our targeted translational research accelerator, and Stephen Blakeney is funded through the READY scheme as Innovations Manager at DPP. I'm not going to labour the next few slides. I'm just going to flick through them really quickly, but just to give you a bit of sight as to some of the activities at the national scale that you can get involved in. These are a whole range of reports that MTPConnect releases. I mentioned the sector competitiveness plan. That is kind of a future-looking document that tells you where our sector is headed, and that came out about 2 months ago. So I highly recommend you take a look at that one. But there are a whole range of reports from fighting superbugs to clinical trials to regenerative medicine. So they may be useful for the work that you're doing. When it comes to the sector competitiveness plan, like I mentioned, it provides an overview of the sector and our performance, where we need to prioritise future growth and actions. If you want to take a look at the data here, Essentially, this is some of the broad stats that come out of that sector competitiveness plan, and it can tell you who's involved in the sector. When it comes to R&D across our sector, generally the graphs that are the summary of the sector competitiveness plan are all on the up, which is really good for us. We've seen increase in R&D investment. We've seen increased innovation activities, which we've had a look at through patenting. We also look at things like what's happening in our research sector in terms of number of publications. And also we've always got our eyes on clinical trials. That just gives you some broad, high-level metrics on what's happening in R&D across the sector. And then one of the interesting things that you might be keen to look at is our megatrends. And so megatrends show us what is occurring across time and where the hot areas are. In our most recent sector competitiveness plans, the things that popped up were modern manufacturing and value-based healthcare, increased sovereign capability, and of course that's come about because of COVID, as well as supply chain resilience. So you can start to see some of the mega trends that are going on. That has broadly given you an overview of what the Adelaide Intermediary program is about, how we connect to MTPConnect and some of the resources that you can get access to. I welcome anybody reaching out to me or any members of the team if you want to get access to any of the services that we have on offer. But I am more than happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jo. I think that's a lot of information to digest. I invite everybody to ask any question you have through the Q&A at the bottom of your page. Let me have a look if there's anything, not yet anything coming. Maybe can you share what's coming up next, the coming month or the next 2 months? That might be of interest to the listeners here.
So you might have seen some of the events that we're currently undertaking. So we have got the Essay Spotlight series. These are shining a light on really exciting success stories in the ecosystem. We had Biomed a couple of weeks ago, and we're looking forward to having LBT innovations. I think anyone can attend these kinds of sessions because it's really not about the particular discipline area. It's learning from entrepreneurs how they went about doing what they did and making connections with other people in the sector.
And there's another interesting, good question coming in. How will the changing government affect the future strategy? It's a big question.
It's a big question. It's a big question, and I have to say there's a little unknown in that question right now. I guess we've got 2 levels of government where we've seen change. At the federal level, I can tell you that Labor government generally said that it would support industry growth centres. In fact, it's looking at adding another industry growth centre. So MTPConnect as a national entity looks like it's going to get good support from the new federal government. Inside South Australia, we have a commitment by the South Australian government across 3 years. So we're excited to be the first pilot, I guess, of an intermediary and see how we can demonstrate what can be achieved when we put these kinds of resources in.
Thank you. And I think everybody has been able to see in the media that health is a big part of the state's agenda. How it will shape out, it's early days, but we will be on top of that and supporting the government in delivering on that. Let me see. I have another question coming in. In your exploration of Adelaide's bioscience assets and interviews you have conducted, what do you see are the key opportunities? So what is attractive about the scene here in South Australia?
It's again another big question and a very difficult one to answer. I guess in the short time that we've been here as part of the Adelaide Intermediary programs, there's some big activities that are occurring, particularly in the oncology area, where South Australia has been awarded significant funds and has the opportunity, I guess, to bring together the whole range of capabilities across the state. So I think that is a huge opportunity for us. We've seen the attraction of really impressive individuals to that space. And we've got the opportunity now to create a platform that we can build from. So that's something that I'm really keen on. I guess one of the early insights from having the many conversations that I did was seeing that our participation in some of those major funding streams wasn't what I had expected. And so we always talk in South Australia about not necessarily being awarded as much as interstate. From some of the data that I could see was that we weren't actually even applying as much. And so that's something that we're also really keen to make sure that people know what funds they can apply for, that we connect them to the information and advice that they can get to position their applications best, so that we can start to see those opportunities realised in South Australia. Because it isn't always because we're just not being awarded them. Sometimes we're not actually putting our hat in the ring. So I guess they're two insights that I might make at this point in time. Yeah.
And we will probably ask you that questions many more times, and you know, the insights are really involving in understanding the key gaps, the key opportunities, and the key areas of strengths, and more to come in that space as well. I want to thank Joe for this presentation and the team for all the efforts they've done so far. We have this recorded and we will post it on our website in a couple of days, so you can always go back to the recordings. On the slides you find the contact information to Jo directly, so please reach out to her. And I had one more point before closing, and that slipped my mind. So I just say thank you, Jo and the team, and we're looking forward to this close partnership with LA Biomed City and really change that ecosystem in the innovation and commercialization space together with the team of MTPConnect. Thanks again. Okay. Have a good afternoon, everybody.